Like
the ones I think the disposable ones I have have 4.
And invariably it's going to go to 6 blades, and then we're just going to be raking a lawnmower blade across our face. Right? It's going to be a 7 blade, right? The Mach 7.
They probably already have one.
Oh, I'm sure.
They already have 7, brother.
I'm sure. I go, you know what? I do the simple Gillette Mach 3 disposables. And now that we're wearing the mask, or since we've been wearing the mask for the last year, I'm on about every 3 days I'm shaving now. Because it's mostly concealed now anyway.
Savage.
Whatever, man.
Cheating on it. You got to stay clean shaven.
I'm trying. But man, it's such a dated thing, right? Being clean shaven.
Oh, dude, I know. Look at my neck.
It's such a dated, I'm glad that they did away with the ties at work too, because that was such a dated thing, right?
Nobody really wears a tie.
No,
but I say this all the time. I could sell anybody in what I'm wearing right now.
Well, and I think that the right time and the right place calls for the right type of clothes, right?
Yeah. Just don't feel like we're that formal.
No. Well, and you look at billionaire CEO and co-founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. This guy goes to work every day in a hoodie.
Oh yeah, hoodie, flip flops.
So who are we kidding? You know what I mean? Who are we kidding?
That's a whole that whole appearance thing is very dated for sure.
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter.
Super dated.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Most people are just looking for that connection.
Well, yeah.
They're just looking to have a good time.
And more than a false impression, they're looking for a sincere impression, a sincere connection.
Yep.
A legitimate relationship where both parties are looking to have some sort of an equitable trade or equitable moment. Not this fake, wear my tie. It's
because
fake, man.
Because nobody nobody really wears that anywhere else. So it is fake.
No.
It is fake. It's all facade.
Yes.
For sure. It's just,
there's
no point. We're live, by the way.
I'll take it. Hey. I'm live too.
What's going on, buddy?
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Dude, thank you for doing it.
I feel honored to be a part of the What's Up Brodey brand and kind of the content and the podcast. I don't know. It's cool.
Well, we could this podcast couldn't be a thing if we didn't get you on. You're easily one of my favorite people to talk to by far.
Thank you.
There's levels to this, and you're definitely on top. It's just you're.
I think that the art of or science, or maybe the science and art of communication, is really becoming kind of polluted in the digital world, where there's so much texting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I see that a lot. I see people who struggle with just being able to talk and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's not because maybe they lack the ability or don't have the capacity for it. They just favor a more texting style method, and it's a real tragedy.
COVID didn't help either.
No,
it didn't help.
It almost reinforced that, didn't it?
Oh yeah.
Almost reinforced it where it promoted a more digitalized form of communication where people are just texting. And
just more of a distant social life too.
Well, I remember being when I was in college, I had a great communications professor, and most of the research at the time indicated that upwards of 80% of communication was body language.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So only about 20% of the message is verbal, and then upwards of maybe 80% of it is body language. Just those little cues, right? Those little movements, the eyebrow raise, just little things like that.
You can tell. You can almost tell how someone's day is going just by the way they're moving.
Sure,
that's pretty easy.
Simple things, right?
Yeah.
And you can even almost immediately detect friend or foe just by where somebody's arms are, how they place them, and then I don't know. I think also the anonymity, the kind of anonymous. Kind of impression that one can give being a keyboard warrior on the different platforms that are available, right? It kind of emboldens people in a way that make them, I don't know, it's kind of degrading a little bit of society a little bit, right? Because people say stuff online or through a digital format that they would never say to somebody's face.
They would never say in person.
So why do we have to treat people like that online through a digital text
it's weird.
Style? Yeah,
it's weird. I don't know what they accomplish or what they're seeking other than just being miserable.
Sure. Well, and maybe they're miserable in other aspects of their life. So when they have an opportunity to be a keyboard warrior.
Try to make someone else miserable. Yeah. Got to bring you down with me.
Misery loves company.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
What'd you go to college for?
I have a bachelor's of science in psychology from Tarleton State University. Go Texans. The Tarleton State Texans. I went to school in the Central Texas area. Tarleton State is a Stephenville, Texas-based college.
Okay.
That's where the main university campus is, but they have campuses in Waco, and I was able to go to school there. I started out at a community college, though.
Okay.
Which was a great path for me, and I wish more people would do that.
And why is that?
It's more affordable. You can have a more intimate classroom setting.
Sure.
Right? You go to these big universities, you may be in a lecture hall as a freshman
With 500
students, right? And then like you've got the professor's like assistant teaching the class.
Yeah.
Like, what are you gaining out of that, right?
Yeah.
It's whereas when you go to like a community college, you're in a setting that is a little bit more intimate. A lot of times the teacher to student ratio is a little bit more manageable, and it's much more affordable. Much more affordable.
Absolutely.
I don't know why more people don't do that.
I think there's I think ego plays a role in that.
Yeah.
And also the negative connotation of going to community college often insinuates that you weren't smart enough to go to a big university, which is definitely just not the case.
Yeah. There's a lot of sharp people in community colleges, right?
Like yourself.
Right. And for me, it was a good kind of first step, because when I got done with high school, there was probably like a 5-year gap where I was kind of a knucklehead, and I was a young man. I was in my early 20s. I didn't really kind of have my life right. And so community college was a good kind of reintroduction back into that institution of learning.
Yeah.
And allowed me to kind of get back into the habits of like studying and going to class and be accountable and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I maxed out every credit that I could take at a community college before transferring into a university.
Smart move.
Every credit that I could take that would transfer, I took at a community college.
Yeah.
So
Turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
Got the degree.
Yeah.
Got it done.
Yeah.
And look at you. You easily have the best ability to articulate that, at least out of someone I've met.
Mm-hmm. And the college experience may not be the right experience for everybody. I wish that we would promote more kind of trade school routes, because a lot of people are very kind of well suited for that path, and they can be self-sustaining, productive, contributing citizens of society, and they can be like a badass welder, right, and make a bunch of money.
Yeah,
a lot of times more money than like maybe somebody getting out with a 4-year degree.
Most,
right?
I would say 90%.
You go to school and become like a master electrician. You can make a lot of money.
Absolutely, and there's no shame in that either. Plumbing,
no,
electrician,
all of that,
any of that. I mean, it's
so I kind of wish that we would promote a more, at least explore all of the opportunities instead of trying to pigeonhole everybody into this 4-year college degree route.
What's that one way, only way mindset, like that? This is the only way. I mean, it's a constant like pressure of people to go to college. And it's just not all that necessary.
And there's some benefits to it, right? Sure. So like as a society, I think it's good when we become more and more educated, right? As a society, I think that more people are, obviously more educated now than they were 70 years ago. Yeah. So it's kind of good as a society for us to kind of progress in a way in which we're becoming more educated. But not everybody needs a bachelor's degree to do what they do in life. And probably there's a lot of people who earn a bachelor's degree who probably don't even want that. They get into like the working world, and 10 years later, they're like, man, I wanted to do like metalworking. Yeah. Or I wanted to do different things, right? I wanted to be like a metal fabricator and build things and be creative and have an outlet where I can really kind of grow as a person. Instead, I went to school for being an accountant, right? Yeah. Now I'm punching numbers all day.
It's just as you go through life, you gain those like, different experiences, and those different experiences pique your interest, and which could lead to something that, oh man, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what I've been meaning to do, or that I want to do. Before we get too far, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Rocky Vaughn. And then what else?
That's good.
Rocky Vaughn.
There we go.
Yeah, Rocky Vaughn.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
I also answered a hey, you, all that.
Yeah, right. Snapping of the fingers.
Yes,
A little cat calling, a little whistle.
I answered all of it.
So, went to community college first and then bachelor's degree. Let's back up a little bit. I know just a little bit. I know. I have a brief. I have a brief understanding of your upbringing. Definitely a much different path than a lot of people. I guess here you explain this, tell the story, and then I'll ask questions off of that.
Sure. Yeah. We So, and I think that what you're alluding to is the fact that I spent a lot of years of my childhood living in a group home.
Yeah.
And I grew up in and lived for several years in my childhood in an institution called the Methodist Children's Home, and it's in Waco, Texas. And it was a fantastic institution there. And I hate to say institution, right? But a place, right? A campus where young people would have a place to go when maybe their home life wasn't that good, and ours certainly wasn't. Me and all of my siblings lived there. And it wasn't like you read about like in like Charles Dickens novels where like the orphans are eating gruel and stuff. It was pretty good, man. And I remember when we first went into the group home, I remember for the first time like experiencing what it was like to be like fully fed, or to live in a home where like the electricity was always on, the water was always running. That was like a unique experience for me. And I remember at one point in time, I vividly remember being, I don't know, because I think I was probably 7 or 8 when the state of Texas stepped in and said, hey, y'all are unfit to be parents, and took me and my siblings and placed us in the group home. And I remember thinking one evening at dinner, like, I cannot believe that this much food could exist at one time in one place for people to eat. I was like, this is amazing, man. It was like Golden Corral every day.
Shout out to Kevin.
Yeah, shout out to Kevin. Yeah, Kevin is the regional marketing and a public ambassador, public relations specialist for Golden Corral.
And dang it, I had a question and I just got sidetracked with that. Shoot, I really had something, but all right, we're going back to Plan A. I had another question in between that I thought of when you were talking, but
it was great, right? Because it provided structure. It provided an opportunity to know what it's like to have all of your basic needs met, which, if you don't know what it's like to really kind of struggle, try like not eating for a few days. Those are like real like struggles, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not like, oh man, my cell phone isn't working today, right? Yeah. That's not a real life struggle, right? Or maybe you go for a while where the electricity doesn't work. The house we grew up in, or the house I lived in with my parents, didn't have any AC. There was no air conditioning.
And where were you born?
I was born in Waco.
That was the question.
Waco, Texas.
Okay, so you were born in Waco. Okay.
Waco, Texas. And I lived there for 30 years. Yeah, man, I remember sometimes in the summer just laying there in bed, just like roasting. It would be so hot.
Oh, it's terrible. It's
right?
impossible to go to sleep when it's hot.
And you would like raise the windows in an effort to try to get some relief.
It's just hotter.
Well, and the house we lived in, it was all holed out, right? It was actually, after we stopped living there, the city came and put one of those like red tags on it that says, this place is actually not even suitable for human dwellings, and like bulldozed it, right? I remember like opening the windows, just trying to get some relief, but then like the windows didn't have any screens on them, so the mosquitoes would just tear you up. And so you're in this constant battle of like trying to pull a little sheet over you to try to keep the mosquitoes off of you, but not being able to take the heat. And so you invariably you push the sheet off, then the mosquitoes would tear you up, right? Then you go to school and you have all these like red mosquito bites all over you. You look like you had impetigo or something. It was terrible, man. It was terrible.
That sounds terrible. Because for one, it's impossible to go to sleep when it's hot. And also mosquitoes are probably the worst thing on earth.
But I had a good experience, man, and it was great. And we were, so like that campus is divided up in such that you have these big kind of housing units. And they're kind of like dorms, right? So you got these big housing units across this beautiful sprawling campus there, and you're separated by gender and age. So I was in what we call a home unit that was with other boys that were about my age.
Okay.
And kind of as you got older, then you would transition from one home unit to another, and you would be in a home unit with boys that were about your age. And of course, the girls had their own home units, and the boys had their own home units. And you had what they called home parents, and they would do this like 7 days on, like 3 or 4 days off shift. So they would be there for like a week solid, sleeping with you, staying there in the facility. They had their own room. Everybody had their own room. They would get up, they'd cook for you, they'd help you with your homework, all that kind of good stuff. And they were basically your fill-in group home parents.
Yeah.
And I had wonderful home parents, Mr. and Mrs. Slayton. They were an older couple. They were retired, just wonderful with children. It was a good experience.
What an incredible thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, what an incredible thing to do, to step in someone's life that needs some guidance, needs some help.
Well,
and to be that person that goes and does that. And
to step in and work at an institution or a campus with kids that like they didn't most of them probably didn't have the best start in life.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of like troubled kids in there, right? So there was a lot of like boys being boys, and we were fighting all the time and stuff like that. And a lot of kids were in there who didn't really know kind of how to operate under structure, right? Because we had like chores and we had set bedtimes, and everything that you would have in kind of a quote unquote normal upbringing is what they were trying to reinforce there. And sometimes boys really struggled in that environment because they were unaware of how to operate in that environment. So those home parents would really have to try to work to try to teach and raise kids who maybe didn't have that experience.
And what happened? What forced the state to step in to bring you to take y'all to this? Yeah,
so and that's a good question. I remember going to school one day and there were like a lot of marks on me, and my dad used to just come home and just wail on us like every night, man. It was like an every night thing. And so there's a lot of physical abuse. Obviously with that comes a lot of like verbal abuse and mental abuse, right? It's terrible to grow up like that. And I remember one day the school seeing some marks on me and calling the protective services, and then this opened up an investigation, which eventually led to the state of Texas stepping in and stripping my parents of all of their legal rights to be a parent. And so then you got these 4 kids. It's me. I got 2 brothers, one older, one younger. I like to say one hood, one good, right? And then I got a little sister, and put us all in that same facility together.
Okay. And damn, I'm struggling. What the hell was I about to say? No, so they step in. Damn, Rocky, I'm struggling. I completely just forgot another question.
It was really like a major, obviously a major turning point in my childhood.
Yeah.
To kind of go from, like, I don't know how I would have ended up if I would have had to have gone all through childhood into adolescence and young adulthood, like in that environment where I was living at home. Like I said, the electricity was cut off frequently. Dad would come home and just wail on you every night, beat you up. I don't know. I probably wouldn't be who I am today, right? The group home definitely like provided some structure. And it was cool, man. We had a swimming pool there. It was so awesome, man. It was so. Do you know what it's like to be like dirt poor and then move into a place that has a swimming pool? Man, you feel like you're Richie Rich.
Yeah.
I don't know if do you like remember that show? There's a show about this kid who's like a millionaire's son or whatever. Yeah, I felt like I was like Richie Rich, man. I had food and all of the amenities that most people take for granted. They had a huge gym there, a huge gymnasium. So it was big enough where there was basically 2 full-blown basketball courts. So you could run 2 full-blown games at the same time. And it was just pick up basketball for hours at a time in the summer. And then in the evenings, the pool would open up and they had a high dive and a low dive. So you got to experience that like rite of childhood, that rite of passage where you eventually got enough bravery built up to climb up on top of the high dive board, right, and jump off.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Dude, I don't even know where there's a pool where there's a high dive anymore. I don't even know if that's a thing.
The last one I seen was on Fort Hood. I don't know if it's still a thing anymore.
That, yeah.
Yeah, but the last one I saw was on Fort Hood, and probably like 10 years ago.
The pool on the deep end was, I think it was 12 foot.
Okay.
And I remember standing up on top of the high dive the first time and kind of looking down into that what seemed like infinite blue hole, right? And then once you're up there, like there's no turning back.
Oh no,
right?
you can't. Like, you can't go back down the ladder.
No,
you might slip and die.
Well, not only that, like the other kids are waiting in line for you to go. So if you try to come down, they're looking up like, come on, it's my turn.
Yeah.
And so you like you've committed at that point. Of course, then the first time you do it, it's all downhill from there. And then before you know it, you're doing like the flying squirrel off of there, and you're doing all sorts of crazy double gainers and that kind of stuff.
I never got that wild.
And of course, that
I
led
can jump
to
off of it, but
that led to like being in my late teens and early young adulthood, going out to the lake and jumping off of cliffs and stuff. And now I don't do that no more.
Oh, yeah.
No.
We went to a diving not too long ago. That was a lot of fun.
It's fun, yeah. And we used to go to this lake in Whitney, Texas. We used to go to Lake Whitney, and they have these great cliffs to jump off of. You're not really supposed to jump off of them, but obviously people do all the time. And I remember like exploring and finding new cliffs to jump off of, and not even really being very certain on whether or not it was deep enough. Right? And you would try to like rationalize, well, the water's darker here, so the darker water indicates that it's probably deeper, as if there was any science to that. And then you just jump off hoping for the best, right?
But the water doesn't actually have to be as deep as you think. Like it doesn't.
Probably
it doesn't.
Not.
I think at Devil's Waterhole, it's a 65-foot cliff, and I think the water's only maybe 7 feet deep. And so you just come down, you hit the water, and then you just brace yourself. Like, you'll like bend your knees, you'll hit the sand, and then you just come back up. But it's not that deep.
That seems pretty shallow.
It a little bit.
So when you jump off the cliff, do you like hit the bottom?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
That seems pretty shallow.
I mean, the water slows you down a lot.
Sure.
You're barely hitting the ground.
Sure.
I
you're not going in like torpedo style. Yeah.
No, I remember my question, though. What happened to your parents?
So my dad died when I was in my early teens, and my mom still lives in the area.
Do you talk to her? No, not at all.
No. And I don't know that I really have a need to.
Have you thought about it?
Not really.
No.
I mean, I've got my nucleus, right?
Sure.
I've got my wife, I got my kids, and that's pretty much all I need.
Yeah.
Of course, you want like a group of friends and other people, but at the end of the day, what I need
is them. Yeah.
I need my wife and I need my kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
that makes sense.
That's what I need.
That makes sense. I mean, I have zero desire to talk to my sperm donor, so I mean, I kind of get it.
There you go.
But
and I think, and if somebody has maybe a similar upbringing and they need to try to rekindle that relationship, and that's what they need, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely.
But I don't need that.
Yeah.
I don't need that. Now it kind of makes it weird because like I don't know what it's like to have an adult parent-child relationship. So sometimes I kind of wonder what is it going to be like when my kids get older? How am I going to handle having an adult parent-child relationship versus a child-adult parent-child relationship? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't think you're going to be I don't think it's going to be any different than what you're doing now. You crush it as a father. So I don't think it's going to be any different than
hopefully not
than now. You just get a little bit older, and you get a little bit older.
Because like when you're a parent, you pretty much have two goals as a parent, right? You want to raise a child to adulthood that can be happy, confident, healthy, productive, self-sustaining, contributing adults in society, right? So basically an adult, right? You want to raise them to be an adult, right? So that's goal one. And goal two, once they get there, as a parent, your goal is for your child to look back on their childhood and think, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
I think you're well on that way.
And that's why a lot of times, and you and I have talked about this a lot. Like I don't have a need for like material things.
Sure.
What I desire the most when I'm with my family is experiences, doing stuff, going places, and it can be simple stuff too. Just like me and my son love to go skip rocks at the creek, and it seems like such a simple thing, but he doesn't really ask me for too much crazy stuff unless it's like sports related gear.
Yeah,
he's kind of a sports gear junkie.
It's because your kids are studs.
I'm trying to raise him to get these scholarships to college. Then I can use their college fund to buy me a boat.
Both of them are well
really
on their way.
self-serving. It's self-serving.
Hey,
Well, there's a lot that you can gain from sports.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? There's a lot that you can gain from sports. There's, if you're really committed to a sport, you're learning character traits like what it means to be selfless, right? To help serve as a member on a team. That's really important. A lot of people can't do that, right? A lot of people are so self-serving. They don't know how to contribute at the team level, right? You are building character traits like hard work, commitment to a goal, right? Accountability. All of these character traits are traits that they can gain from sports, and especially sports at a really competitive level.
Absolutely.
Both my kids play select sports. My daughter pitches on a national team. She's a softball pitcher. My son plays on a select baseball team. They travel across the country and play. My son also plays football in the fall. But when you're playing at that level and you're being successful, man, that confidence that you take with you through life.
Absolutely.
Right? Like when you, like my daughter has a ball where she pitched a perfect game on her shelf in her room.
As she
right?
should.
It says perfect game. It's got the date on it, right? Like when it comes time to take the SATs, that's not SATs. That's nothing.
Easy.
Man, I pitched
a perfect game.
I pitched a no-hitter when I was like 12.
Yeah.
SATs, I'm about to crush this, right? Or like whatever it is that they're about to take on in life. Job interview? Oh, that's nothing.
Easy.
Do you understand the pressure of what it takes to be the pitcher in the last inning, standing on the mound, knowing that you got to close out a game and not let any runs score?
To be the closer.
Do you know what it's like to have that singular kind of level of pressure, right? Because and it's
especially
the same
in baseball when it's very much on the pitcher in that moment. Like there's nobody else that really matters. It's just a game between the pitcher and the batter.
That's it.
And you have to be better than the other person.
Well, and that's the same dynamic that you have in like a job interview.
Yeah.
Right? It's you and the job interviewer.
Yeah.
And it's a one-on-one.
Yep.
Right? So if you can take the pressure of being a pitcher or like my son's a quarterback, or my daughter's a pitcher, my son's a pitcher. If you can take the pressure of being that person, a job interview, oh, that's nothing. I'm about to crush this job interview. You know what I mean? And so that's, those are the sort of character traits that we hope to develop through sports. And it's also fun to win.
Yeah.
It's fun to win.
It's always fun to win.
It's fun to win.
It's fun to win. And sometimes it's not fun to lose, but losing is very important.
There's some lessons that can be learned from losing, right? And I'll tell you, winning a lot is also, you want to win as much as you can, but that also carries a burden with it that can prepare you for other things in life, right? Like I remember, so my son plays on a football team in the fall, and we've got a really tough little squad. And at one point in time, we had like 2 undefeated seasons. I think over the last 3 or 4 seasons, we've played about 33 football games.
Okay.
And I think our record is like 30-3. Right? So that's really...
that's serious.
That's pretty tough right there. And what I'm getting at is when you start putting together a lot of back-to-back wins, like there's this kind of weight that comes with that, right? Because the gravity of the loss that comes after maybe 10 wins in a row...
It could be devastating.
Devastating, right? Right? But there's a lesson to be learned in that, too.
And then you see who can rise afterwards, because that's tough. Like you've been winning, and then lose.
Well, and everything that has a beginning has an end, right? You can't win every game as much as you want to, right? You certainly play to win every game, but you can't win every game.
Absolutely.
Right? And there's a good life lesson in that too. You can't close every sale, right?
Yeah.
You can't get every promotion. You certainly strive for that, but sometimes you're going to have some challenges and some setbacks and some hiccups, and that's where growth comes from.
Absolutely,
right? That's where growth.
Most progress comes from.
Yeah. You might be able to bench press 200 pounds, but then you throw 225 on and you can't do it. Well, you push through that, and you'll eventually be able to get that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so how long were you in the group home?
So I was there. Man, it's been so long now. I was in my teens, and I was going into this kind of like, I guess pseudo, I don't want to say rebellious stage, but I really struggled when I got out because I really didn't have like nowhere to go, and so there was kind of a struggle there.
So there wasn't any other family members Like no other family members tried to step in, or
Nobody stepped up. Nobody stepped in and said, "Hey,
do they live there? Did you have other Did you have other family?
I do have some family there in the area. Some family.
And
nobody stepped up.
Nobody
was opening their doors up and was like, "Hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and take you in here, and you're part of the family." And I think maybe that's what has reinforced so much strength with me and my squad, like my wife and my kids. It's like when you don't have that, you certainly yearn for that when you have your own family, right? But I was eventually kind of put together enough money so that me and my little brother got a little 1-bedroom apartment. And nowadays you would call it like an economy apartment.
A little studio.
Bro, it was 1 bedroom. And I remember you could open the front door and take like 5 large paces and be all the way at the back of the apartment. Right? It was that small, right? We had these 2 twin beds, right, in one room. And it was like almost like prison style, right? And there was just enough room in between the beds to have a cardboard box that we used for a nightstand. And we had this alarm clock, 1 alarm clock, right? And we had a notepad, a pencil, and a notepad of paper. And my brother worked the night shift, and I worked during the day.
Okay.
And so we would have to have that 1 alarm clock set for different times. So that neither one of us would be late, right? So like when I would go to bed at night, I would set it for me to get up in the morning. Right? And he would usually come home and go to bed before I got up and left. He'd get off, I don't know, like 4 o'clock in the morning or something, come home and go to bed. And he would write down on a piece of paper, hey, when you get up, set the alarm clock for 4 o'clock in the afternoon so I won't be late to work.
Yeah.
And we would have to like write each other notes on when to set the alarm clock, right? Because we only had 1 alarm clock, 1 room, a box for a nightstand, right? When we first moved into this place, we had a TV that sat on the floor. We had a folding lawn chair.
Okay.
And we would take turns who would get to sit in the chair. And it was we had nothing, dude. We had nothing. I remember that we had like a place setting of dishes for 2. So we had like 2 plates, 2 bowls, 2 cups, 2 forks, 2 spoons, 2 knives. We had like 1 skillet that we cooked out of and 1 baking sheet. It made the dishes really easy, right? Because if you didn't do your dishes, there's nothing for you to eat off of, right? And don't you dare get my 1 clean plate, right?
There's definitely that.
And it was that, like that's literally what we started with. 2 twin beds, a TV that sat on the floor, a box for a nightstand, some clothes, 1 lawn chair. Then that's it.
Then
that's
what?
it. That's it.
What?
So I got a job in sales, and I worked in telemarketing, and that was my kind of introduction into sales.
Okay.
And then stopped doing that because the company I worked for closed. And then I went into retail sales, and I've been doing various positions in retail for like the last 20 years.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where you got started.
Yep.
And what, like, going through something like that definitely most people can't understand, how does that change your perspective on a lot of things?
Well, it kind of changes your perspective between like what it's like to have like a bad day.
Yeah.
What it's like, you know what I mean? We all will have kind of struggles and challenges throughout our day-to-day lives. But most of the time, those dissipate quickly by the time you get home or even by the next day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you string together a bunch of bad days, like with almost no food, no electricity, and that turns into weeks and months and then years, you have a real understanding of what it's like to kind of have a bad day.
Yeah.
Or what it's like to kind of struggle, right? A lot of people don't know what it's like to struggle, and there's a certain amount of
not actually struggle.
Right. And I don't want to say that like I've had it the hardest and all of this kind of stuff, but
no, because Francis Ngannou tops you.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. I mean, I eventually got saved and got put into a nice place where I was treated good, right? And I didn't have to get dumped off in the ocean.
Yeah, you weren't in the Sahara Desert.
Right. But like, I know what it's like to kind of like work hard and what it's like to really kind of have that struggle. It certainly puts things into perspective. We were talking a little while ago about, starting off at a community college. When I was in college for almost 5 years, I worked a full-time job, a part-time job, and went to school for almost 5 full years. So Monday through Thursday, I had a job. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I had a different job.
Okay.
And then during the week, I would take like a morning class, and then I'd go to work. And then during my lunch break, I'd go take an afternoon class. And then I'd go to work. And then when my shift was over, I'd go take a night class. There were some semesters where I would get in like an internet class or two and a few campus classes. Towards the very end of my college career there, I needed to take a statistics class in order to graduate.
Okay.
But statistics was one of those classes that was only offered like every other semester.
Yeah.
So if I didn't get it this semester, I would have to wait almost another full year to graduate. Yeah. So I was like working 2 jobs in Waco, going to school, and then like twice a week I was driving to Fort Worth to take statistics at an 8:00 in the evening class, and then driving home. And I'm not very strong in math, and statistics was so hard, man. At least for me. But it was a necessary credit that I needed to have for my degree plan. So, man, I would work all day, go to class, get off, drive like an hour and a half to Fort Worth, take statistics. With the devil. I had a really tough teacher during my statistics class. Come home, like my wife and my daughter at the time would already be in bed, and that was another thing. Like the whole time I was doing that, I also got married, had my daughter, and then had my son.
How'd you have time for that? How did you even manage that?
You just got in the few moments that you could when you had an opportunity.
Yeah. There
was a lot of late nights. There was a lot of nights where I'd spend some time with my daughter and my wife, and then they would go to bed, and the computer desk was in the room, and I would just be sitting there in the dark in the glow of the computer. And I remember looking across at my wife laying in bed, like cuddling my little newborn daughter, and just wanting to go lay down so bad, but needing to like punch out another 3 pages for this assignment. And so, a lot of staying up late, a lot of waking up early. I think that's why I can go to sleep real fast right now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, my wife is so jealous. Like, I can, like, once I get horizontal, probably within 10 minutes, I can be asleep.
I'm getting there. It's a good feeling.
And I think it's because there were so many years where I knew, like, okay, I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to get 4 hours of sleep. I have to maximize the amount of sleep that I'm getting. So I don't have time to sit in bed or lay in bed and daydream or look at the ceiling. So I would I guess I taught myself or conditioned myself to be able to go to sleep.
Well, I would also imagine you were exhausted.
Well, there's a lot of exhaustion that plays into that too. But even now, years removed.
But you still work really hard though. You're still up every morning running.
Every morning.
You still go to work
every day.
I mean,
I never miss work.
Yeah,
I never miss work.
You still coach your kids.
Help out coaching. Mm-hmm.
You're still extremely busy. It's just a different kind of busy.
Right.
But you still stay equally as busy.
Yeah.
And so that's why you get to go to sleep so quick.
I'll take
the people laying in bed, take an hour to go to sleep is because they didn't fucking do anything all day.
They haven't done nothing.
They did nothing all day.
They're still sitting on all of their energy reserves, right?
Yeah.
Their tank is still on full.
That's why your brain is running around in circles while you're trying to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because you're something wrong with you. It's because you fucking didn't do anything all day.
Well, and there's something to like having a daily exercise routine that I think just is so healthy in terms of like your sleep cycles and stuff like that. I don't think that anybody can argue against. Well, and especially when you look at like the field of like mental health, some of the very first things that you're asked is, what are you eating?
Do you exercise?
How much sleep do you get? Those things are so very important in your life, right? So I think also running every day helps me to be able to go to sleep at night in some weird way.
Yeah, it has to.
Although sometimes, and this is a weird thing to say, sometimes I go to bed at night like excited for the run in the morning.
Oh, I was stoked this morning.
Yeah.
That's probably why I was up at 4:30, wide awake, because I was looking forward to this run. It was the highlight of my week because I didn't get to go to the Muay Thai all weekend or all week. Because we had the podcast and the NFL draft as well. So I didn't get to go to Muay Thai. So going on the run this morning was like the highlight of my week. I still got the lift, but lifting's not the same for me. Like it doesn't have the same therapeutic effects as running has started to. Like we talk about how you just get into that groove. It feels good.
It
feels real good.
State, yeah.
You just start flowing. You feel good. You don't need any music. You're just listening to your breath. It feels really good.
You got a nice cadence going.
Yep.
Your breathing rhythms are good. Endorphins are kicking in. You just feel strong.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times, like I know last night I was excited for my run this morning because
crushed it this morning.
Usually in the mornings after an evening rain, the sun will be coming up and then the clouds are kind of breaking over the horizon. and there's this like beautiful kaleidoscope of colors that like shoot across the sky. And where I run at, it's in a real super rural area. It's me on a county road in between two cornfields. And my out path is east. So every morning that I run, when I get right about to the point of my turnaround, the sun's coming up over the horizon.
Yep.
And there's something that's like refreshing about, I know a lot of people like sunsets, right? But there's something refreshing about a sunrise. It's and really reinforce,
new day, new opportunity.
It like reinforces that new day, hope, new beginnings, opportunities. Yeah. Whereas the sunset, I think, kind of symbolizes the closure of the day, right? Obviously, it's done, it's over. The sunrise, I think, there's something that like is really nice about the sunrise. And you couple that with like a really good run. The weather was nice this morning. It was like mid 60s. There wasn't a lot of wind.
You finished your 7 miles before I even started my run this morning.
Yeah, that's my goal. I want to get up every day before the sun comes up.
Savage.
Every day.
I know. I usually walk the dog before the sun comes up, but lately in the mall parking lot there's a fucking coyote, and I don't think the coyote's gonna mess with us because Arya's bigger than him or her, and then I'm bigger than it, and I doubt that it really wants to mess with the both of us. But it's still, it's getting bolder and bolder. Like it was in the middle of the parking lot this time, where it usually stays around the edges where the grass is and
like
where the trees are. Yeah, but this time it was in the middle of the parking lot. This motherfucker, like Simba, jumps up on the like the little rock with the trees or whatever, like the little. In the parking lot, there's those little, I don't know, like little mounds or whatever. This coyote just jumps up on top of this little mound and is just watching us, just staring us down.
I think they're like intrinsically curious.
Yeah, too. I think he was just sizing us up, trying to figure out it. I don't think he never moved. He never came near it. Like he didn't want to come close to us.
I've had some close encounters like that on my run. I remember one morning running in the fog and like a coyote like stumbling upon me, or I stumbled upon it, or maybe collectively a little bit of both. Yeah. And we just had that moment where we were like both kind of stopped in our tracks and
like, whoa, what are you?
He eventually kind of like receded back into the fog, and I was like, oh, thank God.
I really don't think they want any part of it.
Hopefully not.
I don't think so.
It can be.
Their mouths aren't. I don't even think their mouths are really big enough to. I mean, they would hurt obviously, but I don't think they would openly attack.
One, probably not.
No.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about animal behavior to know this, but I think maybe if you got a group of them together, they may try to jump you.
Oh, for sure. A group. Absolutely.
They may try to jump you like, I don't know.
If there's a group of them, they might. But there's the one, I think you're okay.
It can be kind of intimidating sometimes, especially in the fall where it stays darker throughout most of the morning. Yeah. And I don't really get to see that many sunrises. When I run, I've got this headlamp, and sometimes way off in the distance, you'll see the coyotes packed up around like you know what a round bale of hay is, right? The big round bales. And there'll be like one or two coyotes on the top, two or three down below. And they're just like posted up on this round bale, right? And they're kind of watching me, and I'm kind of watching it, and all I can see through my headlamp is like the glow of their eyes. Yeah. And I'm like, oh man, guys,
that's kind of creepy.
Y'all just stay back there, man.
Yeah, that's a little much.
Right.
Yeah, they're running in the country.
It's wild, man. But man, there's like no cars out there, and so I mean, the most you might see is like, I don't know, a farmer going by on his tractor or something, right?
Like a person.
Yeah. I don't like a lot of, like I want that morning run to be like a solitary experience. Yeah. Right? Because I kind of do that for me. It clears my mind.
For those that don't know, how often do you run?
I try to run every single day.
How long have you been doing this? Like, tell us about your morning routine.
I probably got into running maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Okay. Maybe. So my morning routine is every day my alarm clock is set usually for no later than 5 a.m. Okay. On my early mornings, I'll have it set for 4, alarm set at 5. I get up. I'll usually try to pound a bottle of water. A lot of times I'll let the dog out while I'm on the back porch or letting the dog out. I'll kind of get my game face on, make sure I get my shoes on. I do a little bit of stretching, grab my headlamp, make sure I've got a good battery in there. And then I'm usually trying to get out on the road by 6.
Okay.
And then most mornings it's about 4 miles, 4.5. When I have the time, I try to do maybe 7 to 8.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It seems like the last couple of days you've been upping it.
Yeah. Well, I've got some goals. Some
Oh, yeah?
that I'm trying to build up to.
Yeah. What kind of goals, Rocky?
I've kind of kicked around this idea. I'll be 40 in December, and I've kind of kicked around this idea with trying to do like a long, like I guess it would be considered an ultra endurance run. And I just feel like it would be
a good
cool
chunk of change
if at 40 years old I got up and ran 40 miles.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is.
I think it'd be awesome.
Right? Wake up on your birthday, 40 years old,
Yep.
and run 40 miles.
Yep.
Yep. And so
I think
that's
you should do
kind of, and I'm kind of getting excited just thinking about it. I find myself
Yes, I love it.
On my lunch,
I
kind
love
of
it.
looking at like ultra endurance videos.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole like kind of science to it,
Sure.
right? How much you have to eat in the days leading up to it, what your hydration needs are, what your nutrition needs are during the run, what sort of training and the blocks of runs that you'll have to do leading up to an event like that. And I don't know anything about it, so I'm really going to have to try to educate myself on this sort of an experience if I want to be able to do that.
What made you come up with this? Like, what did it stem from?
I don't know. I mean, I like running. I enjoy it. I've always wanted to run like a long distance event, and being in retail, those events are usually held like
on a
weekend. So I really haven't had the chance to do like a half marathon or a 10K or something.
Have you ever
like
done a
that.
marathon or any of them? Never done none of them.
I've done a lot of like 10 milers before.
Okay. What's the longest you ran?
About 10 miles. Yeah.
Okay.
In one shot. So I don't know. What a better way to kick off your 40s than by running 40 miles.
Well, we talked about this. I think it's the perfect age.
Yeah, right. Because I think that if you try to run your age beyond the age of 40, I think it just becomes so
tough.
challenging.
Yeah, that's kind of tough. We were talking about this on my run this morning because I brought this up. I was talking about it with my running partner. I was telling her, I was like, yeah, my friend wants to do 40 miles on his 40th birthday. And I was like, I feel like 40 is just the perfect number. And she was like, yeah, I think 50 for 50 is
right.
I feel like that's a little different.
Right.
But 40 for 40 is perfect, or 30 for 30. I think those are the two right there that are past. Like they're so challenging that it makes it very intriguing to do. Like 20 for 20. It's still challenging. 20 miles is still challenging by all means. But a lot of people have ran 20 miles in their life.
Sure.
But how many people have ran more than 26.2 miles?
Right. That's like another level, right?
Like once you pass that, because that's a marathon. There's plenty of people who've done a marathon in their life, but who's ran further
there's
than
a lot
a marathon
of kids
in
that
their
run
life?
marathons, right? There's a lot of like 13-year-olds.
My dog could run a marathon.
And
Dog's a savage.
I'm sure. I'm sure it's challenging, but I think to run 20 miles at 20 years old is a lot more
feasible,
right? Easily digested than maybe running 50 miles.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Although I've been watching these like ultra endurance run videos and these different events held around the country. There's a lot of people who are kind of further down the road.
Both David Goggins and Cameron Haynes are in their 50s.
Oh, they're savages.
Can you check? Look up Cameron Haynes. How old is he?
And like they do like the 100 milers, right? They do the ones out in the desert.
He did the
53 years old.
53. So for those who don't know, Cameron Haynes is an absolute freak. He's done the Moab 253, which is a 253 mile run, but it's not just a normal 253 mile run. It's in the mountains of Utah. Mm-hmm. Like they're trail running.
Oh, and then you start factoring in elevation, loose terrain, right? Because that's a lot different than just like running out on the street on a county road where the terrain is predictable, it's flat.
Yeah.
When you start running trails, that's like
because you got to pay attention to your footing. You have to be a lot more careful when you step so that you don't twist an ankle or whatever it may be. Man, I still remember the Joe Rogan episode with Courtney Dauwalter, when she did the Moab 253 and she came in first and she beat second place by like 10 hours. Something crazy.
Yes, yeah,
it was like 10
crushed it.
hours. She beat second place by 10 hours.
Right. And she's like the most unconventional looking
She
runner.
was talking about eating like hot Cheetos, chips.
She usually shows up and runs. I think if this is the same person that I remember, I think Courtney will show up in like these like basketball style shorts and like a loose t-shirt. Is she the one who does that? And people are looking at her.
I'm not
like,
entirely sure. I just remember her being on the Joe Rogan episode, and Joe Rogan just being so mind blown because he's trying to get like, you know, what's your secret? What do you eat? You know, what's your training like? What do you do in specific? And she was just so unregimented. Like her nutrition was trash. She said she just eats nothing but like nachos, just you know, just a very.
And I think that speaks to how something like that is really much more of a mental thing, right? And I think that once you get to that like 40, 50, 100-mile plus event,
that's exactly
I think that
what
the
it is,
differences between the genders begin to average out, and now it becomes about the strength of the mind. I mean, what do you think? Surely, right?
I would agree because I mean, I don't care how good of a shape you're in. I don't care how long you train. I don't think you can like physically prepare for 253 miles. I think you have to be mentally prepared for 253 miles.
Sure. Yeah.
Like it's just.
Where do you think that they have to go, like in their mind, to be able to do that?
Somewhere so dark.
Some distant.
Just gone.
Oh man.
Gone. Like I mean.
And what about when they do those desert runs? It's like 116 degrees during the day. How do you even hydrate for that? Like you literally can't.
I don't know.
It's like
it's fascinating.
I'm sure that like the amount of hydration you're putting in, you're losing it
easily.
Like
yeah, just
or maybe even by the half.
Boom,
hour.
Just going out. Man. Yeah, I know. Courtney said once they finished the 253, they said that they wanted to plan a 500 miler.
Oh wow!
Like what?
Wow!
Like what? She said she slept 10 minutes. 10 minutes, or no? She said she took one 10-minute nap and one 2-minute nap. So I think it was a total of 12 minutes, and she finished just under 3 days or just over 3 days.
Well, surely a 500 miler would have to be one of those like stage type races where you go through like stage 1, and it reminds me of the story of Cliff Young. And I know that I've told this story before, but Cliff Young was this guy in Australia, and I'm probably going to kind of butcher the story up, but he was this farmer, and this guy shows up at like this ultra endurance run.
Oh yeah.
And he's wearing like some like Oshkosh Bagosh overalls, and he's got these like rain boot galoshes in case it like rains, and he enters this race with all of these like elite athletes who are wearing like these, you know, like Adidas shoes and these windsuits, and they're, you know, sponsored and been training. And they're like, Cliff, you ever run a race before? He's like, no. Why'd you pick this one? Well, it was free on my schedule, and I always wanted to do something like this. And it's like they're running from like somewhere in Australia to like 500 miles away to another spot in Australia or some distance like that. And they didn't tell him that like normally people will like run and then sleep for a few hours and get up and run. So at night, he just ran past everybody and didn't know it. He beat the course record by a lot, man.
It's just so that's exactly what we're talking about. It's just he wasn't physically prepared, just mentally different.
Yeah.
Just an absolute savage.
Well,
there's a whole movie on it.
I guess.
The Cliff Young story by Julietta Jameson.
Yeah, if you really want to get into something interesting, look up Cliff Young, man. He's this bizarre looking fella. He's this kind of like country boy from Australia, and he's just he got into this endurance running and almost by accident. And I think that also, you know, like we were saying, that it speaks to just how kind of mental it is. Right?
Yeah, and it's just, and we were talking about this today at work. A lot of people feel like that when they go on this journey of being a better person, they start to compare themselves with these kinds of guys, and it's just like you can't. You're not. You're not gonna be Cameron Haynes. You're not gonna be David Goggins. You're not gonna be these just ultra savages who it just every single day they're just on 100% of the time. You're just not gonna be that person. And I saw a good quote actually on the way here. He just says, just be 1% better than yesterday. I think that's much more achievable.
Sure. Just do the little things well.
Just do the little things
well,
yeah.
Right? And the cumulative gain from doing the little things well over a long enough period of time will be substantial growth. I mean, it'll be substantial.
The issue is the instant gratification.
Yeah, people
I struggle
want
with this.
that.
I struggle with this too. I'm just not a very patient person.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I haven't dug into it that far.
Are you kind of just a product of society where everything's been so instant?
I would imagine that definitely didn't help. I don't know. I just want things to happen much quicker than they tend to or really supposed to. It's with everything. It's just like 0 to 100 with anything, and it's just it's everything's got to be so much more of a process. And I really started focusing on that when I lost a lot of money in the stock market, thinking I was smarter than the stock market, and just instead of like I could have retired last year with the amount of money that I invested at the time in which I invested it. Had I just held through COVID, I could have retired last year. I could have made more than enough money. But are you saying that you got out prematurely? Yeah, I
made
panicked.
Some premature decisions.
Just panicked. And I guess that's not necessarily patience, but that taught me patience. I guess the issue itself wasn't a lack of patience. It was more of panic selling. However, it taught me patience because you just gotta hold on. Mm-hmm. Just hold on. A lot of stocks, especially if it's a big company, they're going to tend to bounce back at some point. You just got to be patient enough to hold on and just not sell when they start to dip. And instead of selling when they dip, just buy more.
Double down when it's lower.
Yeah. Got to.
Man, that's kind of an easy thing to say.
Oh, yeah.
And that's easy for me to absorb, being that I mean, I've got my little like retirement investments, but I don't really play the market.
Yeah.
So that's like information that's really easy for me to absorb, but I think it would be hard for me to actually practice if I had some skin in the game.
It's tough. Right before COVID, I mean, when everything dropped 60-70%, I mean, that was most people just panicked.
Sure.
And just sold. But if you just held and if you'd have bought more, whew.
Yeah. Well, and there's
so many people that did. There's a whole club called Tesla Millionaires that became millionaires off of the Tesla stock last year alone. Because it rose like 3,000% or something insane.
Well, I think it's easy, right? That's why they say hindsight is 20/20, right?
Yeah.
It's always easier to look back and say what you should have done. And I think sometimes, unless you're an absolute expert in something, you make decisions that you feel like are going to be the best decisions in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And
absolutely.
So, now if you're like an absolute 30-year-long stock market veteran, you've seen these kind of peaks and valleys, and you probably
a little different.
That sort of an individual probably fared very well and knew, okay, when things drop out, I'm going to buy twice as much, and probably ended up coming out good. But
also, no, I mean, should have known that it was going to bounce back at some point.
I don't know, man. There was some. I tell you, when we first went into lockdown last year, like there were some times where I was pretty concerned about like kind of the outlook of things, especially at the very beginning when it was like, okay, the state's going to shut down for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then like we got furloughed from work, and I was really, there were some times where I was really kind of
all the toilet paper
like
disappeared.
Concerned. Yeah.
There's
what of all things, right?
Yeah, right. The toilet paper disappeared. Now it did start getting a little shaky towards the end of lockdown when there was a lot less meat on the shelves.
Yeah.
So that goes back to kind of what you were talking about earlier, just the different perspectives.
Sure.
Because we're just so used to just walking into the grocery store and getting pretty much whatever you want. Mm-hmm. There might be one thing that they're out of.
And it being available.
Yeah, being available. And
having the resources to acquire it and it being available is such a luxury that most people
take it.
Sure, and even I think even now I fall into a position where I kind of take that for granted.
Oh,
man.
sure.
Like
sure.
I remember being very young and going to the grocery store with so little money, and I was living with my little brother in that 1-bedroom apartment we were talking about, and we would have like $35. and everything we put in the basket, I remember like writing down how much it cost, because I didn't want to have to suffer the embarrassment of getting to the register and not having enough money for what I had in the basket and having to put something back.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm at a point now where we go to the grocery store, we get what we want. We probably get, other things that we probably shouldn't. It's like, oh man, they got Lucky Charms with twice as many marshmallows. We're getting that, right?
The two times.
Stuff, right? Yeah, double the marshmallows, right? And now we just kind of put stuff in, and we don't really think about it, and there's food's in the refrigerator and it's readily available.
We were humbled twice.
Yeah,
we were humbled twice in 1 year. We had the lockdown where food started to get a little shaky, and then the ice storm where their food was real shaky for a second.
Yeah. That was tough, man. I was without power for like a week.
Yeah.
I think we went almost 6 days with no power.
Yeah, rest in peace, your goldfish.
No, oh man, my Squinchy,
sucks,
man, he was a plecostomus,
Sucks,
and I had this plecostomus for like 7 years, I think.
Oh, it wasn't a goldfish.
No, it wasn't a goldfish. But man, he was like this, I don't know, 88-cent, pet store fish that you bought, and I think he was a bristle-nosed plecostomus, and
like that,
and yeah. He had these like kind of like bristly things coming out on his nose, and I don't know what their lifespan is, but you keep this like 88-cent fish alive for 7 years. Well, they're part of your tribe now.
Oh, absolutely,
man. They're part of your tribe.
Yeah.
And we talked about me not really having a family as a kid, and now that I have a family, that's like I feel so incredibly responsible for them. Like, man, this is my wife, these are my kids. We got a dog, we had a fish up until the ice down, right? And yeah, I think maybe the coldness of the water, it was just more than he could bear.
Poor
so
guy.
He died, man.
That's terrible.
It was tough, man. I felt like I lost a member of my tribe.
7 years you kept him
7
alive.
years,
Just
this
for
little 88. Dude, it was to such a degree, and I was so close to this fish, and it's such a bizarre thing, right? But it's like we bought this fish feeder that's like motorized and it has a timer. You clip it to the top of the tank.
Okay.
And so when we go on vacation, every 24 hours it would make a rotation and drop a little bit of food into the tank.
And so was it the only fish you had? Just the one fish?
It was just the one fish.
What made you
man.
want to get just the one fish?
Well, we got him as a result of having other fish in the tank. And because, you got to have something to clean up the bottom there, right?
He just
plecostomus
outlived everybody else.
Yeah. And
what a savage. 7 years.
Dude, he was a stud, man. And I mean, anything that can live off of the fecal matter of other fish is already pretty tough anyway, right?
Yeah.
And
that's fair.
But man, he wasn't tough enough to outlast that ice.
Do you think? So we were humbled pretty hard twice last year, or in a year span, because the ice storm was this year. And yet it still feels like people are very quick to just kind of forget that, and didn't really have a shift or a change in perspective. I guess.
Well, and the real tragedy is that after two pretty close events like that, it seems like as a nation or as a society, or as a community, we would kind of grow stronger, more together, and maybe come out the other side better. I don't know. I think in some ways it didn't make us any better. It didn't make us.
Well, that's what I was going to kind of say. I guess we were humbled twice. And I think there's a portion of us who are like, ooh, that was crazy like that. We got to be prepared. And I think a lot of people did a pretty decent job of like checking on their neighbors and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I don't really know how I want to word the question. But essentially, the people whose perspectives didn't change, who come in and have like an accident chair emergency, like the people whose perspective didn't change through both the COVID lockdown and the ice storm, I feel like they're just kind of lost forever. Like those were two things that
there's a lot
pretty drastic.
So there's a lot going on there, right? So we I think are at an all-time high, and I can only speak from my perspective and kind of what I perceive, right, in my day-to-day life. We're at an all-time high of this like sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
And it's such a false sense of entitlement.
But if you had those two things, shouldn't that have like brought that down a little bit?
I think it should have, right? But I think that shows that the strength of the sense of entitlement is so strong. It's going to take something much worse than that. As bad as it is to say that.
It was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know people who had newborns were sleeping in their car.
It's terrible.
Yeah, sleeping in their car just to stay warm enough. And there was a few people who didn't have water for a couple of days and bitching.
Well, and all of the people during those events who would like go to the grocery store and then get mad at the teenage kid working the register. Like, every time I come here the past 3 days, y'all have been out of toilet paper and meat. It's like, yeah, bro, everybody's been out of toilet paper and meat.
No shit.
And why are you taking it out on some kid ringing you up at the register?
Who's showing up at work? Shout out to Okay, so HEB. How incredible is it that they had a bunch of 19, 20-year-olds show up to work during that ice storm?
Mm-hmm.
That
Still had the doors open.
That speaks to the company.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if, it turns out that they forced all of them to get, but no one can force any of those kids to come there. So for all those employees to still show up in the middle of that ice storm, that's pretty incredible.
Sure.
That speaks to the company and how they treat their people.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Well, you go to HEB and you see a lot of those, and a lot of people will probably use that as a place of employment for now to get to where they want to go in life. But then you also see a lot of people there working who have their badges that have like their years of employment, like 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. Mm-hmm. And you see a lot of those people there. So they must be doing something right.
And I feel like I feel like the employees are always in a good mood.
Yeah. Or at least they act like it. So.
Yeah. But in order to put on that front at that age, I feel like you have to be working for a fairly decent company.
Probably.
Or in fairly decent management.
Probably.
Because they could go work at In-N-Out, mm-hmm. or they can go work somewhere else and make the same amount of money. Mm-hmm. So in order to continue to do that, I don't know, I thought that was cool. That was cool. In the middle of the ice storm, you had all these kids still showing up to work.
Yeah, and they, and they were there, and they may not have had much to offer on the shelves, but they were still, open. Generally, I think most of the HEBs were open, and at least during the day, they may have like shut down like at night, but then I'm sure that they probably had to deal with a certain amount of Karens coming in there, yelling at the employees, like
it's just so crazy.
They're like
where do you live? Like, what mountain do you live on?
Right.
In order to act that way.
Well, and that's people who were upset at the grocery establishments for not having the groceries on the shelves are probably the same people who have never been hungry before. And that's the first time that they've experienced that. And so now they're like, it's so foreign to them. Like they don't even know. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? You don't know what it's like to have a bad day until you haven't eaten for about 48 hours. Yeah. Right? You're going into that
until
third
you had
day.
An actual bad day.
Yeah.
Like a really bad day.
Yeah.
We were also talking about that today on the run. She was saying that she had went to Cambodia, and that was the thing. She said that she went to this she took one of the riverboat tours, and there were people who were from Vietnam who were stuck in Cambodia from the war, but they couldn't get citizenship in Cambodia, but they also couldn't return to Vietnam. And so the government, I guess, in Cambodia allows them to live on the lake, where like they kind of live on this like floating houses on the lake. Wow. And she said when she was taking this boat tour that she said she remembered this little girl in what looked like a barrel floating in the lake using a whatever as a paddle. And it's just like, when you see stuff and hear those kinds of stories, I just don't understand how you still feel like you have it. Those people are almost living
in like an exile, right?
Shit, essentially.
Yeah, they can't really be a member of the community that they're in physically. They
can't return back to where they were. Yeah.
So they're essentially living in exile.
Yeah.
Man, that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah, and it's just like I just don't know, man. It's really easy to get out of touch with reality. I think it's really important to experience stuff like that, or at least be knowledgeable of stuff like that, so that you can try to come back to reality. Right. Because it's very easy to, it's very easy to like sulk in your day, like, you know,
Sure.
somebody cut you off in the road, somebody cut you off when you were driving. It's very easy to just fall into that trap.
Sure.
And like, oh, you know, my life sucks. My day sucks. But does it really though?
Right.
Does it really though?
Does it really suck while
Does
you're
it
sitting
really?
there watching your 70-inch big screen TV
Does it really?
on your $1,000 cell phone?
Yeah. Could it be
soaking up
better?
the AC in the middle of July.
Could it be better?
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
But could it
Could it be worse?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Well, do you think that that's because, and again, I'm only speaking from what I can kind of perceive through my eyes, my perception of the world. Do you feel like we're in kind of a celebrated victimhood kind of era?
Yeah.
Where
a little bit.
I think there's some of that going
A little
on, right?
bit.
There's some like celebratory victimhood going on.
Yeah.
And it's almost a badge of honor for somebody to be, and I'm not talking about like real victims who have endured some sort of, tragic experience, but like minor things that go on in people's lives and they think that there's some sort of a victim. A good example of this is my wife was showing me a post. It's been several weeks now, of an individual who, I guess that they had done like a grocery pickup and ended up getting like some sort of chicken nuggets that weren't gluten-free and they were supposed to be gluten-free.
Chicken nuggets?
Or
Oh, like the
something
breading
that.
maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she
Like
had
chicken
posted a
gluten?
picture of it, of all the chicken nuggets, like in the bag, in the trash can. And she had posted this like rant about, thank you XYZ grocery store company for giving me the wrong chicken nuggets. These were supposed to be gluten-free.
My day is ruined.
Yeah, and that's what the whole rant was. And she was like, I'll never shop here again. And like somebody posted under that, like, you can't eat gluten, but your husband can. Why'd you throw those away? Like, why? Like your husband and son could have ate those. They're not gluten. They don't have a gluten allergy. And so it was, I don't know. And I don't look at very much social media, so I'm not really super aware of kind of the culture of it.
Yeah, you're not missing much.
And so I don't have any social media really. And so like when I see that, it's like, why would you post that?
I don't know.
Unless you're like openly inviting some sort of empathy, as
Why
if
didn't you
you
just
wanted,
go back
as
to
if
the
you've been victimized.
Why didn't you just go back to the grocery store and just get the right chicken nuggets?
Right. Or if you have a gluten allergy, hey, I can respect that. Eat what feels good and settles with you well. But man, there's like 2 other people in your house that could have eaten those chicken nuggets. You didn't have to throw them away. And so I guess I say that to say that sometimes there's this like celebrated victimhood of look what happened to me and why would you even post that unless you're wanting to invite some sort of sympathy?
You're asking for attention.
Yeah,
I feel like they're wanting validation. It's like for a little kid, from the childhood, like little kid, like
but validating
I have a
what?
boo-boo, give me a kiss, like on
What do you
the
think?
boo-boo.
What are they validating?
They want validation, so they want somebody to be like, "Oh my gosh,
This
I
is
sympathize with you.
This
That's
is so
terrible."
awful. I can't believe it.
They're looking for that. I think.
Yeah.
And I
What
feel
is
like
that?
that
What
comes
is
from their
that?
childhood.
What is that?
So you mean like, why do you think that people? Because I think that like breeds like, right? And so the more that you broadcast out that some subtle little thing, some minor inconvenience has victimized you, the more that and the more, I guess, attention or sympathy that you receive from that, it kind of reinforces itself. And so it's like, oh, it kind of feels good when people pay attention to me for getting the wrong chicken nuggets. And so maybe kind of like breeds like. And
like, just the ridiculousness.
Yeah. And one of the real tragedies of that is that sometimes people really experience some really tough things in life. And it almost kind of lessens that experience for them when somebody else is broadcasting their victimhood of some minor inconvenience and posting about it, only to kind of openly invite the empathy or the sympathy from it.
Have you ever called a company's corporate?
I've never ever called a company.
Has that even like crossed your mind?
No.
It's so silly.
No.
It's so silly when you think about it, because it's like, for one, do you really think they give a fuck?
You're just a drop in the bucket. You know what I mean?
Bro, just go shop somewhere else.
Yes.
Just shop
Yes.
somewhere else. What do you really think you're going to achieve by calling this corporate
Sure.
number that probably leads you to someone who is probably at the bottom of the company, who is just pretending to be someone.
Some entry-level person answering the phone in a booth somewhere.
Yeah, it's just so wild. It's just like, oh,
Well,
man.
that's that kind of entitlement that I was talking about, that kind of victimhood, false victimhood over minor inconveniences.
It's just weird. Like, you see it at restaurants.
You
when
see
you
it at
speak to the
restaurants.
manager.
And
Like the
there's
food comes out wrong or something. It's just like, dude, just ask them to take it back and just get you the right food.
so
It's so easy. It's so simple.
there is an establishment, whether it be shopping or dining or entertainment, that's a right fit for everybody. And if a specific establishment is not a good fit for you or not a good fit for your family, then you don't have to go there.
Yeah.
You can choose to go somewhere else, right? But instead, I think that we're at a point now where again, people want to be kind of celebrated for having felt as if they've endured some sort of an inconvenience, and then that really gets kind of sensationalized, and then they go back to becoming a keyboard warrior, right? Because it's easier to go
Leaving a Yelp review.
leaving a bad review about somebody because you're dogging them out on your phone using your keyboard, because you probably wouldn't say that to their face, and it's just, man.
Where does it end, Diane?
Well, I guess the real question is what do you do to try to kind of shift away from that? You know, what do you do to?
I don't know.
To kind of shift away from
I don't know.
that.
I think conversations like this, maybe.
Yeah, it's important.
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
You know,
Because you can't. Have you ever tried? I don't know. Trying to talk to somebody that is doing that and trying to have a conversation with them is also can be difficult, because they just refuse. They're just so stuck in that mindset that they just refuse to make any attempt to change.
that's so dangerous when people don't want to like change. And,
That's why we're in the that's why we're in the climate that we're in now, the political climate that we're in now, because everyone's just stuck in there's just two tribes, and everyone just wants to stay in those two tribes, and that's it. There's only two. You're either with us or against us. There's no in between. You can't see a little bit of this side, a little bit of that side. That's not allowed. And
oftentimes the best solution is kind of somewhere in the middle.
Usually in the middle.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah, but we're not. Man, tribalized is such a good adjective there. Right?
Everybody looks through everything in this like small keyhole, versus just looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, I think that's why, man. I always tell like young parents, or maybe somebody who's going to become a parent. There's oftentimes that parable of there's no instruction manual to raising kids, and there's not, right? But man, if you just teach them to be kind, everything else will kind of fall into place.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything else will fall into place.
I guess that takes me away with my next question, Rocky. Dang, I was gonna say, what is it? What characteristics or character traits that you are trying to make sure that you instill into your children?
So for sure, excuse me, I had to get a drink there. For sure, hard work, right? Hard work, for sure, hard work. I think that sometimes people are afraid of hard work, right? They're afraid of the grind. They're afraid of what it means to be kind of disciplined. But you need that. You need sometimes that struggle, right? An analogy that I'll draw on a lot of times is like the metamorphosis of a like caterpillar to butterfly, right? The caterpillar goes into the cocoon, and then it comes out as the butterfly. If you were to like take that caterpillar as they're beginning to emerge from the cocoon and assist it by kind of cutting the cocoon open and helping that butterfly to come out, it's not going to work for that butterfly, right? Because there's this struggle that is needed to be able to come out of the cocoon that helps them to strengthen their wings enough to be able to fly. Yeah. Right. And so people need that. So
what do you do? How do you go about this with your kids? Like, how do you
Sure. So
How do you try to explain this to them?
You make some things hard and you're unapologetic about it. Sometimes you just have to be very unapologetically difficult and hard and put them in situations that are kind of hard and difficult to try to help promote that struggle, because that's where the growth comes from.
What's an example?
Schoolwork, for sure. Schoolwork. My kids are homeschooled. We've homeschooled my children ever since they were born. My kids both operate intellectually and academically at a level that is far above what their peers are operating at. And and we're unapologetic about that. Yeah, you're in the 5th grade, but you're going to be doing 8th grade algebra. Okay. And that just is what it is. You've got, an exam coming up and it's going to cover 5 chapters, but that's the way that the curriculum is outlined. And that's the way that we're going to do it. We're not going to chunk it up so you take like an exam after each chapter. And that also kind of sets the expectation for life, right? So sometimes when you're in like the work environment, you don't get to choose oftentimes how you are able to complete a difficult task. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's a specific way to do a specific task, and there's no short path to do it. And so for sure in school, we're pretty unapologetically difficult. And it's funny because a lot of my kids, a lot of their friends will say stuff like, "Oh, you're lucky, you're homeschooled," and my kids will be like, "No, you don't understand. Like, you don't understand, right?" And then like I'll talk to like some of my daughter's friends, and like what I'm discovering is it's almost impossible to fail in school now, because they're telling me things like, if you fail a test, they'll allow you to make it up and get a grade up to a 70.
Oh, I believe
up to a passing grade. And it's like, well, so you get like do-overs all the way to the point of being able to reach a passing grade?
They already don't keep count or keep score in younger sporting events. You know who's keeping score? The kids playing.
The kids for sure know the score.
It's so wild that it's to appease the parents, not the kids. It has nothing to do with the kids.
Mm-hmm. Because the kids want to keep score.
Absolutely, the kids want to keep score.
I assure you,
100% the kids want to keep score.
Yes, the kids want to keep score.
It's to appease these parents. It's wild.
It's this kind of, and this may be a little charged statement, but there's this kind of equality of outcome kind of phenomenon in which there's this desire to have a complete equal outcome for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's a lot different than equality of opportunity.
Absolutely.
You certainly want everybody to have the opportunity to do things that drive them or that they're passionate about, or to pursue endeavors, right? But you don't necessarily want everybody to be freely given the same outcome.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for example, we want everybody who wants to be a heart surgeon to have the opportunity to go to school and learn how to do that. We don't want everybody who goes to school to become a heart surgeon to graduate, right? Because some of them are going, they don't cut it, right?
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I think that the no score in youth sports is this kind of equality of outcome thing, and that's a dangerous slope to go down.
It is.
That's a real slippery slope.
I don't even know because who comes up with this? Who thinks this is a good idea?
Well, I think it's because maybe there is this thought or this notion, and everybody is kind of too apprehensive to say that's not a good idea, right? And because they don't want to, and maybe some of it is they're afraid of speaking because maybe they're concerned that they might get canceled if they provide some sort of an outlook that is counter to what's currently being provided. But I think that, and then that starts building like momentum, right? Maybe like one or two people are like, I don't think we need to keep score. And the other 8 out of the 10 are like, man, we really want to keep score, but we're apprehensive to say no. So we'll just kind of go along with it. And now that kind of becomes a standard, when really I think probably most people would want to keep score.
Yeah. And all those attributes that we talked about earlier, you kind of lose that. You kind of lose that when you're not really keeping score.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sets such a false expectation.
Yeah, because life is going to slap you in the face.
Yeah. When you go to a job interview, they give that job to one person.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets the job, right? And so when you have this, everybody's a winner, everybody gets a participation medal, that sets a false expectation.
That's why you see a lot of people, upset about going to college, coming out, and not being able to get a job. Well, that's life. That's the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And you were just spoon-fed all the way up until now.
Sure.
And now life is smacking you in the face.
And then they go online and post about it, and then
Yeah.
they look for a celebrated victimhood.
Exactly.
And it's
it's a vicious cycle.
They
Sure.
post about their chicken nuggets.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
they
non-gluten-free
post
chicken
about their
nuggets.
non-gluten-free chicken
And they
nuggets.
probably don't even have a celiac disease.
Probably not.
Because
right?
most people,
Well, that's
not
that-
even most people, almost no one is actually, or at least from my understanding of it, almost no one really has a celiac, like a incapability of digesting celiac.
I don't know enough about it to really speak to it, but
Yeah.
I know that we've been eating gluten for a long time.
Yeah, I just know it's not that common.
And-
It's
and
it's
I
just
just-
really not that common.
I don't think that all of a sudden there's this large population of people.
It's
who-
the same thing with a peanut allergy.
Oh yeah,
We created that.
same thing.
It was created. It wasn't around until the 70s. People weren't allergic to peanuts before then.
Right.
Like, it's just this.
And now they
it's-
are.
Now you can't even have peanuts on an airplane.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's stupid.
That's terrible.
It's stupid.
But yeah, we so we'll certainly try to promote struggle through school. Homeschooling is like another one of those things.
What made y'all decide that you wanted to homeschool your kids?
That's a good question. So there are probably a lot of great kind of public school settings, and
Sure.
probably the overwhelming majority of teachers in public school settings are very good. And,
Sure.
And teachers have a pretty tough job already, so I don't want to take anything away from
Absolutely.
that. But there seems to be an increasing frequency of like schools being places where agendas are being driven, and it kind of takes away from the actual experience of learning. You may live in an area where your school is more left-leaning or the school district is more kind of right-leaning, and you see that influencing agendas within the schools. So we definitely didn't want to be a part of that. We also felt like in a school setting, you kind of have to kind of be about on par with everybody else as you progress. And we wanted our kids to be ahead, right? And let that kind of be a template for everything, right?
Because it's almost frowned upon when you go to school to be that much further ahead.
Sure. People are like, oh, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm trying to be the best version of me.
Yeah.
Right. And
it's an interesting concept at that age.
Right. Right. And I think that's even a foreign concept for most adults to grasp, right?
Sure.
Being the best version of themselves.
But especially at that young of an age.
Sure. And kids are so capable of so much more than most people think, right? And so we definitely wanted to have them learning in an environment that wasn't being agenda influenced. We wanted to give them a very strong, solid academic foundation so that when they go to like my daughter's probably going to go to high school this year, right? And we feel like she's got a strong enough foundation academically and from a character standpoint that she can enter that environment and probably
do just fine.
Succeed. Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Sure.
And the curriculum that we use, it's a faith-based curriculum, and that's important to us. And it's not a good fit for everybody, but it's a good fit for us. And we talked earlier about having some experiences and why, and that's important to me. It's important for me to have experiences with my kids, go places, do things, see stuff. When you're homeschooled, you can do your own thing. Like we'll go on vacation in the middle of the school year, right, and go do stuff. We will on my days off during the week. Those are their days off. Right. So I never have to miss them because I work in an environment where I'm working on the weekends. So if my kids were in public school, I would be at I would be at work on the weekends and they'd be at home. And then during the week when I had my days off, they'd be in school. So I'd never get to see them.
Yeah.
And man, I love my kids. I love my family. I love my wife. I love spending time with them. I'm so ridiculously attached. Every opportunity that I have.
I feel like that's even becoming kind of foreign.
It is. I feel
like a lot of people just are constantly nagging about their significant other. And that's always weird to me.
I don't get that.
It's always weird to me.
I don't get that. I don't get how people, and and this probably drives my wife a little bananas, and she'll probably tell you, but like when we're even at home together, if she's in the other room, I don't know, folding laundry or something, and I'm in the living room, I'll tell her, come in here with me. Like I even need her in the same room with me.
Bring,
right?
bring
I
the
need you
clothes
with
into
me.
this room.
And that might be foreign to some people or awkward, but it's not for me, man. I want to be with my family. I didn't really have that as a kid, and so that's the most important thing for me. It is the number one most important thing for me.
And you talked about that the other day. You said something that kind of stuck with me. Is you said prior to I don't remember the exact age, but somewhere around 18, you said you don't have any memorabilia from prior to that, and so that you keep each and every one of your daughter's drawings.
She is a prolific artist, and ever since she could hold a pencil or marker or a crayon, she's always doodled, drawn. She does these great like watercolors now, and she'll do acrylic painting and different sort of types of mediums and different things. We've got a really nice art desk too, and so every like scrap sheet of paper that she's ever doodled on that I can keep, that my wife doesn't like find before I do, like I try to keep that, right? And it can be like anything that she's ever doodled on a napkin, right, at a restaurant while we were waiting, right? Like I'll try to keep that because it's just so. Well, first of all, it's like just super precious to me, right? But also like, I don't have any real physical items that prove that I ever existed as a child. Growing up in like a group home setting, you had like, like your bed, and you had some clothes, but you didn't have like, stuff like a normal kid would have, right? And so I want to keep that, and probably not necessarily for my kids. My kids will probably get older one day and be like, Dad, why do you have every Happy Meal toy that we've ever had? Well, it's because maybe in some kind of weird way I want that, right? And so I don't want you to be robbed of having items that show that you existed as a kid.
It's almost as if you're almost living vicariously through them. Maybe
a little bit. One could interpret it like that. But I get really like attached to things. I think that probably stems from never really having stuff, but not attached to things in terms of like expensive, like material items, man. Just like silly little stuff, man. So like years ago, my daughter gave me this little bitty like necklace, and it's got a little bitty cross on it, and it's hung from every vehicle that I've ever had. From the rear view mirror, right? And I don't know, it's probably like a dollar store little necklace or something. But like she gave that to me, and it's just like it's sentimental to me, right? Yeah. It has meaning, right? Yeah. And so I'll just hold on to stupid stuff like that, probably longer than I should. Some people probably look in my garage and be like, "Man, you're kind of a hoarder." I'm like, no, this is just some of my kids' stuff. Yeah, it's actually everything that they've ever had since they were born.
I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, and like you said. I think a little bit is like you're kind of living vicariously through them. And whether that's healthy or not, I think that's just way that you cope with your childhood as an adult.
Maybe. Yeah. And, I think it's important to be able to have some sort of representation of your life. And it doesn't have to be all like physical, tangible stuff, right? But, I've got like movie tickets from when me and my daughter or my kids, my family have seen certain movies. Like you go to the theater and you get your ticket and it's printed on there. 10:30 showing of Tangled or some kids movie that we went and watched, Disney movie, and we'll like hold on to that stuff and just little sentimental things. Yeah. That's it.
And for someone who's listening who is now inspired to homeschool their kid, how does that process work? Like, how do you go about that?
It is, so to do it the right way, it's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than people are willing to kind of commit to, right? So we use a faith-based curriculum through a Florida company called Abeka, Abeka, Abeka Homeschool Curriculum. And they will provide you with like the curriculum, and you can order and you can get through them grade-specific curriculum that is kind of an entry-level package for what they have, and you can get like really kind of robust curriculums that are stacked deep with a lot of different subjects, probably more than what they need for their age group, right? So they have various items available, and so we use a curriculum through them, and then we'll supplement in additional what we think is important, right? So like when my daughter was, I think, 10 or so, maybe 12, we bought her a laptop because I wanted her to be able to know kind of like how to navigate a computer. What does it mean to like save a file or open up a document, or what's the internet? Of course, now it's so intuitive for them now. Most kids probably know that already, but like I didn't own a computer until I was 25 years old. And even now, I kind of struggle with some simple technological things that most people are like, oh yeah, you just cut, copy, paste, do this. And there's a lot of things I still struggle with. So the curriculum that you can get doesn't necessarily have like computer skills in it. And so we'll supplement in things like, how to type effectively, how to print a document. Like I remember going to college and in a freshman English class, the teacher letting us know that our first assignment needed to be double spaced. And I remember stopping him at the end of class saying, hey, what do you mean by double space? And just it being such a foreign thing to me. So I want them to be comfortable with technology, I guess is what I'm getting at. And that's an example of some stuff that we'll supplement in that we think is important. You got to be regimented because it's real easy to be lazy. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you have to be disciplined with it. My kids have a routine. They get up, they get dressed, right? Like they're going to school or going to the bus stop, right? They'll have breakfast. They'll maybe knock out some morning chores if that's what they need to do. And then they go to the kitchen table and it begins. And my wife does most of the homeschooling, thank God, because she's a lot smarter than me, right? As is the case with most women, right? They're usually a lot smarter, right? And hopefully most people will strive to marry somebody who's smarter than them.
Oh, yeah.
That way they can be challenged, and she'll administer, and she'll kind of go back and forth between the kids. And we're pretty fortunate now that our kids are old enough that there's a lot of moments where, like my daughter being 13 or 14 now, man, she just turned 14 the other day. She's able to kind of be a little bit more self-guided, which allows my wife to kind of pay a little bit more attention to my son and kind of provide him with some guidance on some different things. And then she's there to go back to my daughter. And you got to be regimented. And we have very high standards, right? For their performance. My wife keeps track of the grades, right? There, like there's a grade book. She knows where their averages are at all point in times. When they get ready to take a test, there's no like do-overs, right? Yeah. That's not a thing, because you don't really get do-overs in life. And so, if you take a test and you weren't prepared and you bombed it, that's on you, and so you got to do better next time. It works out good because, like I said, if we want to go on vacation in the middle of October, we don't have to go to the school and say, well, like our kids are going to be out for a certain amount of days, and then we have to endure the stink eye of the administration for, well, why are you leaving in the middle of the school year to go down to Florida? And it's because they're my kids, right? I'll do what I want to with my kids. But that's one way, right? There are various entities that will provide you with a curriculum that you can purchase. Mm-hmm. Texas is very like homeschool friendly. So there's not a lot of like structure, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, what's the regulations? Like, what?
There really is no regulations. So a lot of it is kind of on the honor system, right?
So how do they keep up with this? Like, who do you have to report to somebody? Do you have to where the grades go?
That's a good question. So the grades go in the grade book, and we have their grades and their coursework for every year that they've been in school.
Okay.
Right. I guess you could say kind of their transcripts, if you will.
And does that need to be presented to somebody? Like when your daughter's going to high school? Like what's the...
So we definitely are going to have to get her registered to go to high school. And we just register her as a student coming in who's been homeschooled. And we tell them how old she is and what grade she goes in, and then she goes right into the school system.
But they don't check anything. They don't check where she's at academically, or
I kind of want them to, just so I can be like, man, y'all don't know, this girl's so smart. Yeah, but then they might test her and be like, well, she really needs to be in the 10th grade when she really needs to be in the 9th grade, because that's her peer group, right?
Yeah.
But no, we don't have to report to anybody. There's no like governing body or regulatory agency looking after that. And I really challenge anybody who is, and there is some pros. There's a lot of pros to it for us, but there is some cons to it, right? We definitely one of the benefits of being involved in sports is they get that kind of exposure to kids.
Get to have friends.
Sure, and man, there's so my kids are so popular. They got friends everywhere in the neighborhood, on the sports teams, and so the different people that we're affiliated with, and so they get that interaction with kids and stuff. So there are things that you can do to help provide some exposure to other kids where they can kind of learn how to act within that social setting. One of the arguments is, well, how are your kids going to know how to act in a social setting if they're not in school, right, with other kids? And I've seen how school kids act, right? And there's probably a lot of good school kids. There's a lot of bad kids too. So I don't know if that's the perfect setting where they should be learning the examples of what it's like to act in a social setting, right? So we certainly work to kind of spearhead that and make sure that we're kind of guiding them along the way.
And what's the average cost? Like, what does it cost to get this curriculum?
So as they get older, it definitely goes up in price, right? Because the curriculum becomes more complex. There is like higher volume of curriculum needed, right? So when you're in first grade, it's like ABCs, letters, numbers, 1, 2, 3s. When you're in ninth grade, it's like geometry, you're moving into calculus, you're getting into more complex subject matter. The sciences are more difficult, right? So when you're younger, your science is really kind of more health related, right? What are good foods to eat? What does it mean to have good hygiene? That's a lot of your science when you're younger. And there is some standard science stuff involved, like learning about matter, the different, and the word eludes me, like solid, liquid, gas states, right? There's some a lot of observational science stuff, but when you get older, the science gets more complicated. So there's a higher cost involved in obtaining that curriculum. And it's several $100s per kid. It can be up to several $100s
each
per
year
kid. Each
or
year.
per?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Each year.
So each year.
Each year we ordered their
too crazy.
No. It's definitely budget friendly. It's not like thousands of dollars. And then of course there's your standard cost throughout the year: papers, pencils, map colors. A lot of the science curriculum, they'll have like different sort of like experiments set in there. So you'll have to buy whatever materials that you need for the science experiments. Beakers or different things. But it's from a cost standpoint, it's pretty affordable.
And in order to homeschool your kid, do you have to be this widely intelligent person, or is it set up in a fashion where So the curriculum that we get, they can help to provide you with some supplemental curriculum to help you guide and teach the student. Okay.
And that's there if you need it. My wife's pretty smart, and I don't think that we've ever really obtained very much of that curriculum that is like the teacher base, like the grade books and stuff like that. I can tell you though, you got to be pretty sharp as they get older, because it gets kind of complex. And we got to really kind of see this during the pandemic last year, when a lot of kids who were in a public school setting did more of a kind of quote unquote homeschool setting, right, with their distance learning and their Zoom classes. And parents were like calling my wife like, hey, how do you do that algebra again? Like, my kid's doing this distance learning. And so you kind of really get to see, curriculum is like any muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. So. And
what does your wife do? I know she stays home, but like what? Did she go to college? What? Yeah,
so she's just a few credit hours short of her bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Both of my kids were born while I was in college, and while she was kind of at the beginning of her college career there, and she pressed forward quite a bit. She probably has about a semester left to complete her bachelor's degree.
In what?
She's more of a business major.
Okay.
Business, human resources. And she probably will eventually complete it and do it. I certainly hope so, and I think that she will. That way, my kids can't say, "Well, Mom didn't do it," so they won't have an excuse at that point. But my wife's always been pretty sharp.
How'd you meet her?
So I lived next door when I lived with my parents, next door to one of her relatives, right? So I've kind of, and then I went into the group home, and then I left the group home. We went to the same high school together, so there was kind of, I guess you could say, maybe a bit of a rekindling there. We went to, at least started our college careers together, and I continued on and finished mine. She was really one of the driving forces for me to go to college. Because for a long time I wanted to marry her, and I always joke with my kids and I always tell them things like, man, I asked your mom to marry me 100 times before she said yes once. Right? And I think that she only said yes because I kept bugging her, right? But she was really kind of one of the driving forces to really help me to kind of get back on track in my early 20s. Because there was a long time there where, like, pretty much from like 19 till about 24, I was a young man, I was reckless, and I was doing the things that young men do, and really kind of wasted a lot of my life. And then me and my wife really kind of started building a relationship again, and I knew, like, if I wanted to be anything worthy of a husband, I've got to better myself, right? So that was kind of one of the driving forces. And then, like, once my daughter was born, that was the real foot down on the gas pedal to really be a good person, a productive person, a successful individual, for sure.
And so y'all dated in high school?
A little bit, kind of off and on, yeah.
And then there was a gap.
Mm-hmm. There was a bit of a gap, and we kind of grew apart, and then we kind of grew back together again. And there was some growth, right, that kind of comes from that. And now, man, I just can't imagine life without her now. We've been married for 15 years.
15, that was
15
my
years.
question. So 15 years, and then known each other for a while.
A long time, yeah.
Long time.
A long time. And there's nothing better than being, like, fully and wholly committed to another individual.
Yeah.
There is this, when you go places and do things, when you have somebody to share that with, right? When you share the journey of life and the different peaks and valleys to have somebody with, man, I couldn't imagine doing the things I've done in my life and accomplishing the goals that I've done and doing that alone.
It also makes it tremendously easier.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And, I was talking about us kind of challenging each other, and that's important. It's important to have a spouse that can kind of challenge you, mentally, emotionally, on every aspect of what it means to be a human, right? And you need that for that growth.
Yeah, so y'all can continue to grow together.
Sure. Yeah.
Continue to both get better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
One day we'll be this little old couple laughing at each other as our bodies fall apart. I'm sure that she probably chuckles to herself at the thought of me waking up on my 40th birthday and running 40 miles.
Oh, well, we're gonna do it.
And there's I'm down. I'm definitely gonna do it.
We're gonna do it.
I'm definitely gonna do it.
We're gonna do it.
I'm definitely gonna do it. Laughter is certainly laughing at each other and laughing in the moment. Man, it's so important to laugh. Like, nobody can really make me laugh hard like my wife. That, like, deep down belly laugh. Just being silly together. Man, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than that.
Oh yeah.
Your kids make you laugh, man. God, the kids make you laugh so much. And for me, the kids are the completion, right? They're and when you have kids, that's when you truly learn how to love. And a love that is so unconditional, right? And you see and hear stories in the news of these, people who have been maybe not successful in their life and in and out of jail, and their mom keeps bailing them out of jail. Maybe you even know some people like that. I know I do. I know, 30-year-old men who mom, like their mom will bail them out. They're living in the basement, and people on the outside are looking at them like, you need to show that kid some tough love and kick them out on the street. Man, when you have a child, you don't. You just love them unconditionally through the good and the bad, and they'll really teach you how to have a love that is totally unconditional. And from the very beginning, it's so odd and bizarre to like when you have a child and you hold this baby for the first time, and you are just so utterly just in love with this child, and you've never even had a conversation with this individual. You've never heard them, right? You've never even seen them, right? Other than maybe a grainy picture on the sonogram, right? And when this kid's born, you just instantly love this kid, and you fully love it all the way down. Like, you can feel it in your teeth, man. I can't even really explain it. You just without and without wanting that love to be reciprocated. I mean, obviously, like, you want your kids to love you back, right? But you love this kid no matter what.
Yeah.
And you instantly love this kid. The concept of like deadbeat dads, I don't get that. I don't understand how you cannot want to be a part of your kid's life.
Again, I think that ties back to your childhood.
Maybe, yeah. And maybe, I don't know. I just, everything I do is for them. Everything I do is for them, and maybe some of that is the kind of growing up in that group home setting, maybe. But your family's number one. It's the most important thing.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Well, I perceive to agree. Just me and the dog.
Yeah.
But
it's kind of the same, right? A little bit, kind of, sort of.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's not like, no, that's my kid. I mean, my dog is my kid.
Sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd plan my whole day around her.
Yeah.
Gotta go home at this time. Can't stay out too late because I gotta go home and take her out. Like, everything is about her for sure.
Will you take that, multiply it times infinity, and take it to the depths of forever? And that's what it's like when you have a kid.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Hopefully, but it's like empowering too,
because I know
right?
I know what I would do for my dog. Like, if someone started beating on my dog, it's gonna be lights out for that person.
And if that coyote in the mall ever decides to like try to like take y'all on,
it's lights out for the coyote.
And you would do that tenfold for your kid.
That's a crazy feeling.
You hear those crazy stories about moms lifting cars off of their kids in accidents. Like, where does a woman get the strength to lift a car off of their kid? Well, when it's your kid, man, you'll dig down into those deep recesses to do whatever that you can for them.
I can't fathom that, because like I said, I know what I would do for my dog, so I can't even fathom that strong of a feeling for another, like a human being.
It's the completion, I think, of being a human, right? Meeting the love of your life, falling in love, marrying her, knowing that you're going to spend the rest of your life with her, going through the trials and tribulations of having kids and helping them to grow to be those successful adults, right? Making sure that they have a good childhood. That's so utterly important, I think. It is the completion of kind of who we are as human beings, right? And hopefully it should be for everybody, because without the desire to have that completion, then we would kind of cease to exist as a species, right?
Yeah.
If everybody kind of collectively decided, that's not really the path for me, then that kind of be the end of humans, right?
But it almost seems as if that's becoming a thing.
Sometimes, yeah. It seems like there is this kind of movement towards not getting married, not having kids, and I can get it if that's not in the cards for you, that's fine. Everybody has to do what is the right movement for them. But I think that people achieve a level of happiness that is when they're married and with a family, that they can't obtain when they're just kind of going through life solo.
Yeah.
And it's a long journey to take without somebody. Right. Sure. It's a long. Life is a long journey, and it's and there's joy in celebrating the triumphs in life with somebody, and there is this reassurance that everything's going to be okay when you hit the low points. When you're with somebody, man, to try to endure that alone, it's tough, man. It's tough, life is a long journey to take without somebody. And for me, I think it's better to do that with somebody.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I agree. Well, Rocky, man, I know you got to get up early in the morning. Plus, you also got a long drive home. And
yeah.
I'm over here. My ass is cramping.
Well, man, I can talk like forever.
And I can sit here and listen to it for forever.
Jordan, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, I widely enjoyed this. But also, you're just one of my favorite humans.
Well, thank you.
And yeah, it's just, I just hope to grow up to be half the dad.
You certainly will be. If that's your goal, you certainly will.
I hope so.
Absolutely.
Out of everybody I know, Rocky, you're like next to my dad as far as who I aspire to be as a dad.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
You are
And you're-
certainly the role model
Absolutely.
that I aspire to be.
and both of y'all can definitely do it, and you don't necessarily have to have kind of the best start in life, and it's not necessarily about kind of how you start. It's about that journey to the finish.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
40 miles, December 3rd.
Yes, sir.
We're doing it.
Oh, we're doing it.
You got it.
We're doing it. You're crazy enough to do it, and I'm crazy enough to tag along.
Well, I've got to do it now. I've committed to it.
You just committed
on
to
air,
it.
right?
That's true.
I've committed to it.
We just committed to it. Oof. All right, well, gotta start running more.
There you
Shoot.
go.
Guess I'm running all 31 days this month. Eesh.
It's a start.
Eesh. All right. Hey, thank you so
Jordan.
much. It was a lot of fun. You guys, we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.